Talk about sports. You're a sports podcast. Talk about sports tonight. Call to the bullpen.
And we'll get you feeling all right.
Boom.
Da 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 da. Da, 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 da.
Oh, now I got it. Oh, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to yet another wonderful episode of Call to the Bullpen.
Hello, everyone. This is Chase.
And Jared.
And Austin Keeney. And not Billy Joel.
Yeah, no, it took me a second. I was like, where is this going? And then
I caught on. I caught on.
It was more for Austin.
None of us play piano, for the record.
I think I could play hot cross buns. Or maybe that's on the recorder. I'm not sure which one I know.
The skin flute?
No, the recorder.
Oh, my goodness.
Skin flute.
I think I can play the Jaws theme on the piano, right? If I find the two keys.
Falcons, Buccaneers.
Yes, that's right. We've got our Week 17 recap, and Austin's just staring me at the face like, stop talking about music.
I love music, don't get me wrong. But we are going to kick off our Week 17 recap. Just to start off with the record of what we went down at the bottom there at 9-7.
Yeah, it's a tough week.
It's a playoff winning record, but you know what?
It's a tough week in Week 17. You don't know who's going to show up and who's going to play.
Yeah, you know that whole fantasy thing too. Sorry about that.
Second place, ain't nothing wrong with silver.
Second place, ain't first place, baby. Get some. Jared, speaking of second place, 11-5. Oh, and you know what I just realized? Not only did I win our fantasy league, I'm 12-4 this week.
That's pretty good.
And
we should tell
and I won the work pool.
Oh, you did?
We won the last week work pool.
Wow.
What a week for football for this guy.
The total thing or the week?
No, just the week. It was
nice.
$220.
That's
but still,
solid.
I put in $30 all season and won $600.
Wow.
So
profit.
That's hashtag value town, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, I went 12-4, Jared 11-5, Chase 9-7, and we're gonna kick it off with Falcons Buccaneers. Jared, the Bucks. What happened here?
I mean, come on, let's be honest. This game was a crapshoot between two teams that have been playing putrid defense all season, and this was just your classic NFC South shootout. You got two teams that are, obviously they've been playing out the string for several weeks now. I think that the Bucks did have a little bit more to play for here, and that shows in the fact that their head coach got fired after this game. So that's why I thought they were going to win, because I thought they should have been a little bit more motivated. I will say Jameis Winston, he came to play throughout much of the second half of the season. I mean, this is a guy who was benched not once, but, not really benched at the start of the season for Ryan Fitzpatrick, but they were slow to insert him back into the starting role based on, his play. So there was a quarterback controversy in Tampa Bay much this year, and Jameis showed in the second half why he deserves to be the team's starter going forward, and they have committed to him for 2019, so he succeeded on that front. But like I said, the Bucks, they've been playing putrid D all season long, squandering opportunities. Here in this game, they actually got in the end zone repeatedly, but the Falcons, they just roared back. I mean, this is still a team, they struggled to put points on the board all season long, but this was a game where it seemed like they kind of exercised those demons, especially in the second half, with Matt Ryan leading a bunch of key scoring drives, ultimately leading up to the walk-off field goal at the end of the fourth quarter. So good win for Atlanta to close out the year, close to 500. I think it would have looked worse for this team, finishing 6-10 versus 7-9. Not a huge difference, but it shows that they're not too far off from getting back.
They sucked all season. They were terrible. Their offense sucked, and I've said it, I think 4 weeks in a row now, at least 3. I mean, this Falcons offense compared to years past, and, even this game, I think this was one of the minimal games that they scored over 20 points, but they just they're known for not having a good defense, but when you also have an absolutely atrocious offense, this is what happens. The Falcons are that team that just scores a million freaking points and outscores you every single game. And that's the only reason they're ever decent. In this year, they just didn't score for shit. They didn't score at all. Well, they gave up a million points to a million teams.
Yeah, well, I mean, they struggled. You're right. They have made their name on their offensive prowess. But they lost a lot of key pieces on defense this year. Let's not forget. They lost their star safety, Keanu Neal. They lost Deion Jones for most of the season. I don't know if he returned for this game. I know he might have been back at the end of the season. I didn't check if he came back or not. And Matt Ryan statistically had a pretty good year, all things considered.
Fair. I'll give you that. That's not wrong.
And they also lost Devontae Freeman, who we thought Tevin Coleman, like for years past, we thought Tevin Coleman could just come in and fill Devontae Freeman's role at any time. But it's clear that he can't be the workhorse. He just doesn't have that RB1 status. So, yeah, I think that the Falcons are going to be a little disappointed with this year, but they're not going to really lose anybody, and they're going to get a lot more pieces back next year. So look for this team to be a contender next year.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this is a team that once they get Freeman back in the fold to have that tandem running back situation, you're still returning freaking Julio Jones and Sanu, and now Calvin Ridley's going to have a year under
Ridley's
his belt.
got another year under his belt. Exactly.
Austin Hooper's not a bad tight end by any means. Matt Ryan still has many quality years of football left. This is a team that could easily cause nightmares for opposing defenses once again in 2019, and especially with the way the Panthers totally flopped down the stretch. And we know the Buccaneers are missing a ton of pieces, especially on the defensive side. This is a team that could totally threaten for a wild card or maybe even the division, because we know how the Saints are. They never seem to string together back-to-back dominant seasons. So I think that they could be right back up there. They just need to make some smart draft choices, upgrade on the defensive side of the football, get some depth if there's injury concerns, but they're not far off.
I don't mean to say this too early in the podcast, but if the Saints win the Super Bowl, there might be one less quarterback in that division. That's all I'm saying.
Interesting. We'll get to that in our second episode, which will be released shortly after this episode, and that will be a full preview of the NFL playoffs. That being said, I'm going to move on to the Dolphins and the Bills.
Well, this is pretty much what you were going to expect from the Bills' offensive standpoint for the last couple weeks has been on an incline with Josh Allen returning from injury, and the Dolphins have been on a super decline since they got that walk-off win against New England in Miami with that amazing Kenyon Drake lateral touchdown as time expired. These two teams, although they both didn't make the playoffs and they really didn't have a great year, they end in different notes. The Dolphins ended on a bad note. Obviously, Adam Gase has been fired. We don't know if Ryan Tannehill is going to return. And on the other side of the things, Josh Allen actually looked like he improved a lot over the season, and he's clearly very athletic. If they can teach him how to maybe be a little bit better of a pocket quarterback and a little bit more accurate with his already really strong arm, Bills are going to be pretty excited for next year. Yeah,
I would agree. I mean, they what amazed me is the fact that the Bills, for them to go 6-10 with the total lack of weapons they really had to work with this year. I mean, you just look at the lack of depth that Allen had to work with this season. I think that they entered 2018 with one of the least talented rosters in the entire NFL. So for them to go 6-10 is like an ordinary team to go 9-7 as far as I'm concerned. I think that they showed a lot of toughness playing under Sean McDermott, honestly. I think that they lost several close games as well, so maybe they're not too far off from that 9-7 mark, in all honesty. I mean, the Bills have always been a franchise that has struggled to reach above, kind of like just, head above water, that level. But they got certainly potential with Josh Allen. They might have their franchise quarterback. Chase, you mentioned his athleticism. What he's been able to do making plays with his feet this season, especially in the second half, has been pretty impressive. And the Dolphins are they're in shambles right now. I mean, firing Adam Gase. This is a team that's now, they're about to get their fourth or fifth head coach of the last 10 years, or potentially less. I think, 8 or 10 years. So they're a franchise that's lacked quality leadership and quality decision-making for quite a while, even though they have some talent on really both sides of the football. I mean, they had some injuries this year. Losing Albert Wilson definitely hurt, along with Frank Gore. But, they've just been a team that they've also struggled to ascend past mediocrity the last couple of years, or several years, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, you hit the nail on the head. My exact point was going to be, listen, they just didn't have weapons at all. I mean, in any way, shape, or form. They had, Kelvin Benjamin that they got rid of because he's terrible. and that was supposed to be the secret weapon to the Bills. So I think if they're going to have a future, I mean, listen, they have some decent defensive players. Jordan Poyer's a great safety. Micah Hyde back there's another, elite defensive player. Jerry Hughes or something still on the defensive line. I mean,
is he still there?
I think he's still there.
Ugh.
I'm almost positive he's still there. And he didn't have a terrible of a season. I think he got hurt for like a couple games at one point, but I'm pretty sure he had a couple sacks here and there and like actually did some decent stuff for them. So, their defense isn't the worst on the planet. It's definitely not great by any means, but it's not terrible. And if they can get some offensive weapons for Josh Allen to throw to, I think they're going to be a lot better off than where they are now. And I definitely think they'll have a shot if they can either trade some draft picks or draft somebody out of this draft class that can really step up and help them.
Absolutely. Let's not forget that this team was a playoff team last year, so it's not like they've had bad seasons. They've been relevant. Next up, we have the Panthers at the Saints, and this game we could pretty much just kind of skip over and talk about these two teams as a whole. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater got the start. Alvin Kamara also didn't play, and Cam Newton didn't play, and Christian McCaffrey barely played. So, as a whole, the Saints have had their best season on record since the 2009 Super Bowl win.
Correct.
Where they also went 13-3 and got the first seed. Funny to note, I saw a stat that same season they lost to the same exact teams too. They won the same record, lost to the same exact teams, got the number 1 seed, and ended up winning the Super Bowl. So things are looking up for the Saints.
Yeah, I did see that same stat, and that was interesting. It was like the Bucks, the Colts, and like somebody else ridiculous, and they ended with the same record, the first seed, and they won the Super Bowl. So that was kind of a crazy stat for that to happen last time and this year also. So
it was also 9 years ago, which is Drew Brees' number. Or was it 10 years ago? 2009 season.
Ago, technically.
Yeah, so 9 years ago.
Yeah, it'd be 9 years ago, correct.
Interesting.
It doesn't feel like 9, right?
Yeah, well,
it kind of does, I'll be honest. The Drew Brees against Peyton Manning in that Super Bowl, that feels like a long time ago.
I mean, 2000 was 19 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah, throw up. Anyways, so yeah, looking forward to the Saints in the playoffs, but not really much else to say about that one.
We could say something about the Panthers and their absolute decline since their 6-2 start.
That's true.
Decline.
I put that very nicely, yes.
You put that this was I don't know if there's a team that I would least have liked to be a fan of this season than the Carolina Panthers.
Shout out Kyle Bruno.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Kyle Bruno.
Seriously, it's like, buddy. How do you go from 6-10 to completely abysmal? You start off 6-10 and then you lose 7 games in a row.
Yeah.
They showed nothing in the second half outside of Christian McCaffrey is amazing. The rest of this team was horrible in the second half of this season.
If we could just dissect this offense a little bit, Devin Funchess is not a number 1 wide receiver by any stretch of the name.
No.
He is not a number 1 receiver. He's just not. So then we move over to running back. You got an absolute stud in Christian McCaffrey who pretty much does everything for the team. So then you move over to the quarterback. And Cam, and I hate to say it because my friend's a Panthers fan, and he's got a Cam Newton jersey and the whole 9 yards. And Cam is not a good quarterback. He's a good football player. He's a tough guy.
He should be a tight end.
He's not a good quarterback. He does not make good throws. He does not make quick decisions either. He's like, when he's successful, it's when he's either rolling out of the pocket and getting himself more time, or his line is just better. And it hasn't been good since they lost the Super Bowl in 2015 or whatever year they made it. Shout out to the Broncos.
Correct.
Yeah. So Cam, unfortunately, I don't think is the franchise quarterback that everybody thought he was. You'll see this with Lamar Jackson in a couple of years. Guys who run the ball a lot, they don't last. And Cam Newton has definitely struggled with some injuries, and I think that was probably the reason why he played so poorly in down the stretch of this season. So the Panthers have a lot of questions.
I agree, especially considering, you mentioned the mobile quarterback. Now that he's got some years on him, those quarterback fundamentals become all the more important because you're going to lose the wheels as you get older. And that's just why these, hybrid quarterbacks are kind of overrated in the league, because they just don't have the longevity as guys that are traditional pocket passers. And I mean, you can have the mobility, but you still need to have those classic quarterback qualities if you want to talk about building a 15 or so year career as a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I did know that, or it is worth noting that they did say that Ron Rivera will return, so there won't be a quarterback change on our next podcast. We're not doing it this podcast. We're doing it on our next episode. We'll be talking about all the coaching changes that there has been.
Correct.
There could potentially be.
Yeah.
Like the whole what's his name over there? The Harbaugh potentially being traded to the Dolphins. I don't know if you guys heard about that.
I did not, but we'll definitely dive into that.
Correct. We'll dive into that in the next podcast. So keep an eye out for that, or an ear out, if you will. But yeah. So moving on to our next game, Cowboys at the Giants. This one really didn't matter. For the Giants.
No,
for the Cowboys, it
didn't matter for anybody.
No, actually,
no. The outcome didn't change a thing, right?
Didn't matter at all. But you know what's shocking, and I'm sure Jared's going to get into this too. It's shocking that the Cowboys played all their starters besides Ezekiel Elliott. Yeah,
the whole time. Like they came out to prove a point or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe listen, maybe it was just to get some momentum going into the playoffs.
Yeah,
I get the whole sit your starters thing, but it's not like this is going to come off weird, but it's not like the Cowboys are the Saints. The Saints are clearly on paper the best team in the NFL. They don't need the momentum going in. They're the top dog. The Chiefs, technically on paper, the top dog. Those teams know that they're better than other teams. The Cowboys are a lower seed. So for me, I would want some momentum going into the playoffs. And if I go into the last week, I sit, I don't play, we lose to the Giants. All right, yeah, we're a little down, but nobody really cares because the game didn't matter. Then you go into the playoffs, there's no excitement, there's no energy there. If you go in and you squeak out this win against the Giants, and you go in on a high note, on a win, on a rivalry game, and you take the W, and now you're going to the playoffs as an underdog, as a lower seed, that to me gives me a little bit more momentum.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You don't have time to rest on your laurels when you're like, a 9-7, 10-6 team, and especially when you're literally playing the next week. It's like you can see why the Saints rested everybody. Everything was clinched, and they weren't going to play for another 2 weeks anyway. But the Cowboys, it's like you're playing next week, and Dak Prescott, this is only going to be his second playoff game ever, so he's never won one. They need him to be as good as he was in this game, although he did make some mistakes. There were instances of him, again, missing people running wide open just because he had to throw the ball over 40 yards. It's like a 50-50 shot with him whenever he has to throw the deep ball. But he did hook up with the tight end a lot, to a frustrating degree. Really, this game just spoke to so many frustrations I have with the Giants over the last, really ever since thinking back to it, ever since they won their last Super Bowl. This used to be a team, man, where late in the game, in the fourth quarter, they could be down and you felt like they were never out of it. Even if they were down by multiple scores with under 10 minutes remaining, this was just a tough football team that was so hard to put away, and they had the grit to pull out wins and steal wins when it didn't seem like the chips were falling their way. And now they're a team that just can't close anybody out. It's been this way for a long time. There was a season with Tom Coughlin, his last year, I remember, where half their losses were games that they were leading with 2 minutes remaining. And now this year there were a lot of games where they would have leads late in the fourth quarter, or it was within reach and they couldn't get the job done, couldn't get a stop, or couldn't get a score. So to me, it's a culture thing that needs to change about this team, because when I look at this roster and the way they've been playing the last several years, even that playoff year, I don't think they had to overcome a lot of adversity to get to that 11-5 mark. I just think that they are a bunch of boys who are flashy and can make some SportsCenter highlight plays, but they're not tough enough to win in this league against real men, really tough teams that have that culture instilled in them. And I don't think they have the right leadership right now. I don't think that they have the right attitude in the locker room, and that needs to change.
Yeah, the Giants will hopefully work on the offseason on improving that, or getting used to that new offensive scheme that they've established there, and I think they're going to have a turnaround season next year. I know we said that this year, but I really think that they're they're putting their foot in the right direction.
It's attitude, man. Let me tell you, they have a top.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also the fact that Saquon Barkley came out and literally smoked everyone that they played against. I mean, he had ridiculous rookie numbers. I saw a stat the other day that he's the only the third rookie to have a 2,000 yard from scrimmage stat, along with I can't even remember who the hell it was, but it was like two pretty big name guys, obviously, because not a lot of people have done it. But the fact that, he came out and proved why the Giants picked him and that he is going to be the future of that team and the future of running backs in the NFL for that matter. Odell comes back. He's healthy. Landon Collins is talking about wanting to sign a long-term deal with the Giants. So, I mean, that's a good step in the right direction. When you see guys like Landon Collins, who are a big player on defense, wanting to stay and not wanting to run out of the locker room and leave and ask to be traded or signed somewhere else or want to get the hell out as fast as he came in, seeing guys that want to stay in that locker room and want to stay on that team gives you confidence that team is going to form a good core and go forward with them. So it should be exciting to see the Giants going forward.
I would agree. And I'm just going to close out with this. I just think that what could really set the tone going forward, they're going to be picking high. This is not a quarterback rich class. I don't think it's the time to get a quarterback in this upcoming draft. A lot of top quality pass rushers though, and that's something that they're lacking. Feel like that will, that if you look at, past teams, that's always set the tone for them is when they've had a really aggressive, almost kind of violent pass rush. When they can pressure the quarterback, they win football games. So I hope that they can find maybe that next Giants pass rusher and picking with the 6th overall pick.
As a Bronco fan, I can also say that is true. A good pass rusher goes a long way. So next up, we have the Jets at the Patriots in an absolute routing in New England. Sam Darnold gets his final start of the season in what could be, a semi-successful rookie year or rookie campaign. I say that Jets fans do have a little bit of hope because out of all the quarterbacks in this year's class, he probably shines the brightest behind Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I mean, Darnold definitely played a decent season. Obviously the Jets ended up 4-12, so you can't say that he had a great season or a fantastic season, but he played individually well. The team sucked, obviously, but he did not play terrible, so it's definitely good to see him come out and play somewhat well.
I mean, who's he got besides Robbie Anderson? And that ain't much, right? I mean, look, Sam Darnold, I think that he is the Jets quarterback of the future, but he just had no pieces around him. He had a freaking horrible head coach. Todd Bowles got fired. They're going to bring in somebody who's hopefully sensible. We're going to talk about this in the next episode, but I'm hoping that they already, I heard that they're interviewing Mike McCarthy. They might be looking at, I know some people speculated potentially dragging Gary Kubiak out of retirement. I think if the Jets get a good head coach in there and fortify the roster with some offensive weapons, really give Darnold some support, this could be a team that's on its way back into contention in the future, but right now they're horrible. The Patriots shored up another first-round bye. That's going to be so critical for them in the playoffs going forward because the team had a losing record on the road this year. So getting the bye was really, really important, and they weren't about to blow it against this terrible Jets team.
No, I don't think that they were ever going to lose this game, even though I think I picked them. Yeah, I picked the Jets. That was more of a spite pick. But, yeah, the Patriots kind of weasel their way, I would say, into the second ranking. And it's going to end up, can the Chiefs take care of business in Arrowhead? As Austin shakes his head because history says that they cannot.
Especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll
get into that, as we say, in our next episode. So moving on from Jets to the Patriots, game that is completely irrelevant. The Jaguars at the Texans.
It was not irrelevant. Texans had to win for a division.
It was irrelevant because it was against the Jaguars, and the Jaguars are absolutely atrocious.
The
Jaguars
Texans
just walked in, were literally asleep, and still won 20-3.
The Jaguars are dreaming of which golf clubs they're going to use from the first tee.
Correct.
I think that Tom Coughlin I think Tom Coughlin's dreaming of what golf clubs he's going to use in anger toward the locker room. I mean, did you hear what he had to say about Yeldon and Fournette after this game?
Oh yeah, they were like joking around when they were getting their butt smacked.
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah, I think he was like mad that they were sitting down on the bench or something while they were.
Yeah, they were laughing. They were giggling
laughing
to
and
each
they were sitting
other
down
while
and
it
just
was
hanging
20-3. Yeah, you didn't hear about this, Jared?
No, yeah, that's why I brought it up.
Wait. Oh, I thought you said, huh? Like as if we were saying something else.
No. I brought it up. Like, yeah, I heard all about it. That's why I mentioned it. Yeah, let me tell you, the Jaguars, their offensive performance this season, and I'm not going to say that the defense played the best that they possibly could have, because certainly they were better last year, but their offensive performance throughout 2018 is simply unacceptable in the NFL, especially when you're expected to compete and be a really good football team. Big changes are coming. Blake Bortles is going to be gone. I think Fournette is the only guy that might be safe, just because you need to keep some.
I don't know, man.
Well,
you hear about that contract situation?
Well, I said might be, because he's the only guy that you could even justify wanting to keep around to have some degree of a foundation, just because he's still fairly new to the league, and he's proven to be productive the last couple of years. He's I'm not going to say that, because they could go for a total overhaul. If they could deal him, I think that they might. They might just go for a brand new offense and just total facelift this team. But whether he stays or whether he goes, everybody else, I think, their jobs are in jeopardy after what they went through this year. You just can't play like this.
Yeah, no, this is bad. Jaguars suck. The Texans walked in and won 20-3.
I was going to say, on the other side of the ball, the Texans win this game and they take the NFC or AFC South division with it.
Correct.
Their first title in, God, it's probably been 5+ years, I think.
There was that one year that they did have a bye, I think, a few years ago. Maybe even number one. It might have been the number one seed, actually, like 12-4.
I think that's over 5 years ago we're talking. So it was a big win, big accomplishment for this team.
Yeah.
What does this team look like going forward in the playoffs?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say, because this isn't a team that really. I like the Texans. I want to see them succeed. Because they're exciting, and I mean DeAndre Hopkins, Deshaun Watson, they're super fun to watch, and obviously J.J. Watt in that defense. It's great to see one of the league's premier players having a chance to compete for the Super Bowl. That's what the playoffs should be all about. You got Clowney in there too. They got a lot of talented people on this team, but they just I feel like this year they didn't overcome a lot of adversity. I feel like they didn't have the hardest schedule, and I don't feel like they're entering the playoffs with as much momentum as they had mid-season, and they're facing a really we'll talk about more in the playoff preview, but I feel like the Colts are not the team that you want to go up against in the wild card round. So
Austin wasn't listening. Austin was
trying to read
looking up
NFL news.
Looking up stats and news.
Yeah.
Let me repeat what Jared said for a second. He said that the Texans did not face adversity this season.
Jared, you realize that they've gone 11-2 since they were 0-3 at the beginning of the season?
There's a difference.
Okay. All right, hold on.
They lost to your New York Giants in the third week of the season.
Well, yeah, they lost.
Or fifth week of the season.
All right, so who do you consider adversity then?
Who do I consider adversity?
Yep.
I look back at a lot of their more challenging games that they had this year and the fact that they lost them. Let's look at all their. I'm gonna read you off all their wins when they had that big winning streak. Colts, Cowboys.
Okay, and you just said the Colts are not a team that you want to face going into the playoffs. Did you not?
This was in week 4. All right, okay. This was good.
But they beat the Colts.
I'm not saying that they have no wins of merit, but I'm gonna read off to you. This winning streak included 5 consecutive wins against the Bills, the Jaguars, the Dolphins, the Broncos, and the Redskins.
Okay, so hold on. They also beat the Colts, who are in the playoffs, the Cowboys, who are in the playoffs, the Titans, who are pretty freaking good.
They were
this year,
half a game
and
out
they
of
were
the
half a game out of the playoffs.
Yep.
Granted, yeah, all right. The Browns weren't fantastic,
the Browns
and the Jaguars
have been
sucked.
good.
But the Browns have been decent. So yeah, am I agreeing with you that they played somewhat crappy teams?
Yeah.
Absolutely. However, they also played a handful of pretty good teams and still came out on top of those games.
I agree. I think they have quality wins that you're just overlooking because of namesake.
No, they do have some quality wins, but all I'm saying is the fact that when you look at other teams in the postseason, teams that like the Ravens and the Chargers, who they had to play each other, had to play the Chiefs, had to play the Patriots. I know that you can't pick your schedule, but I'm just saying you need to be battle tested to a degree, especially when you're a team that doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. The fact that they just didn't face the best that the AFC had to offer, I think that, and the fact that they, what did they go, like 2-2 to close the season? Okay, not horrible or anything like that. They still went 11-5. I'm just saying,
they beat the Chiefs in week 1 of the preseason.
Oh, goodness.
Boom, roasted.
Yeah,
I understand what Jared's saying. However, I
disagree with it to an extent. Not fully, but to an extent.
I also think, and we're getting a little too ahead of ourselves here, my last statement on this is that Deshaun Watson is probably the most overlooked quarterback right now. With people talking about Patrick Mahomes, talking about Lamar Jackson,
Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, stuff like that.
Yeah, all these young guys, and people are just kind of leaving Deshaun Watson in the rubble here, and I think he's got something to say about it.
Sure, yeah. I mean,
also the fact that DeAndre Hopkins literally did not drop a ball all season.
Yeah, that was a close stat.
Not even figuratively didn't drop a ball. He literally caught every single ball that hit his body. Every single one of them.
That doesn't mean that he didn't catch all his passes. So, like, if they were contested, that doesn't count as a drop.
But I'm saying, like, he did not have any dropped passes.
Yeah.
Which is freaking impressive.
Very good.
Like, that's unreal.
Dude's a stellar athlete. Might be the best wide receiver in the NFL, honestly.
I would argue that he is.
Moving on.
Yeah.
You got one more thing to say about it?
I just wanted to say real quick that he had a career high this year in both, by a slim margin, with in catches and receiving yards. And I'm very happy for the guy that he's finally playing with a good quarterback after having to put up with some utterly horrible ones throughout the first 4 or 5 years of his career. 4 years.
Brock freaking Osweiler.
Truth.
Tom Savage. Ugh. All right, moving on. This game is literally meaningless, except for if you're a Lions fan. Lions at the Packers. Lions win 31-0. Aaron Rodgers exits early with a concussion in the first quarter. And pretty much the Packers just threw in the towel and we're ready to go home and stop playing football. I think I have my old moment will be coming from this game, so we'll save it for then. And there's not much to say here. These two teams are pretty upset with how their seasons went.
Yep, time to golf. Let's move on.
Yeah,
Chargers at the Broncos. Chargers 3-9.
You're really moving on that
Absolutely.
fast.
The game's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. There's nothing to talk about. Nobody wants to hear about it.
We'll say something on their season as a total.
Well, yeah.
Packers had a very upsetting season. Always when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you expect to make the playoffs or at least contend to make the playoffs. And obviously that did not happen. They're going to be going through a coaching change as well. Mike McCarthy got fired towards the end of the season. Didn't even make it to the last game. So the Packers, you can at least rejoice in the fact that maybe this new coach will be, kind of like what do you call that? Like a kindle to the fire.
Yeah, a light under their ass, if you will,
exactly.
A fire under their ass. I mean, Mike McCarthy, and Chase, you put it perfect the other day, because I think I said something about the Broncos potentially interviewing Mike McCarthy. Your exact response was, well, I'm not too sure if I'm going to be happy about that, because he's had elite quarterbacks under helm the entire time that he's been the coach of the Packers. And you make a great point, because Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers are two of the best quarterbacks of all time in the NFL. There is no argument behind that in any way, shape, or form. So, you're right. Maybe getting a new coach that can bring a new style to this offense, or just a little bit of a flame that Aaron Rodgers and this team can really pick up from and grow from, is a step in the right direction. So I think it was the right move to get McCarthy out of there, make the guy who you just paid a buttload of money happy, and move on from there and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Packers are, God, they're missing so many pieces on offense. I mean, they clearly have a good number one receiver in Devontae Adams, but they're missing a running game. They're missing other weapons outside of Devontae. They're missing an offensive line. And I'll tell you this, if they can address just some of those areas of need, Aaron Rodgers is good enough to overcome some shortcomings. He can't totally put this team on his back and cover for all of their weaknesses, but if they get the right leadership, if they address some of the team's needs to a place of immediate remedy, I suppose, they could easily be right back in the mix next year for 10 wins, if not more. We saw this year with the Colts how having a franchise quarterback makes you a contender, just automatically. So this year the Packers had too many weaknesses, but they still have, one of the most important strengths that you can have as a football team. So I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to at least, they're going to try to improve this team in the offseason, and the Packers should be considered a threat next year, if nothing else.
As for the Lions side of the ball, I don't know if any of you guys heard about this. Did you hear what their coach is doing?
What?
He's showing up drunk, he's getting drunk before meetings and missing them, because he's hungover and shit.
Oh, so that's why Patricia's missing
the rocket fucking scientist.
Oh, that's why he's missing the meeting. I talked about him missing the meetings, not showing up on time. It's because the Lions have driven him to drink.
Yeah, exactly. He's just.
Oh, this was what, Patricia? You're saying?
Yeah, you didn't hear about this? That he's getting hungover. He's getting fucked
Jared,
up.
You mentioned it last week. I think that might have been your own moment where you were just like, dude, you're the head coach of a freaking NFL team. Show up to practice and meetings and games. And that's what it's from. The dude's just a drunk.
He's just fucking drinking his sorrows away, probably. Because
listen, I'm drinking as we're recording this, and I'm not that. I'm still showing up.
Showing up to the meeting.
And I ain't getting paid. So what the hell, man? Show up to your meetings, brother.
Oh my!
An absolute train
goodness,
wreck.
Matt Patricia's pulling a Wes Scantlin on all of us.
Yeah,
should have stayed with the freaking Patriots, kid.
For real. But yeah, the Lions. They ended the season on a good note. But man, if you're the Packers, I don't think that you'd have anticipated that you'd have nearly the same record as the Detroit Lions this year.
I was gonna say you have the same amount of wins as the Lions. Chargers at Broncos. Last game for my Denver Broncos at home ends up with an ass kicking from Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. I am so done with this season. I'm not even upset about it. I just want it to end so that we could just fix ourselves. So
clean yourself.
Yeah, clean house. Chargers win, but they still get the number 5 seed because the Chiefs won. So they will be playing against the Baltimore Ravens this weekend in Baltimore, a team that they just lost to 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, they lost pretty badly to the Ravens a couple weeks ago, I might add. So the Chargers, they had a terrific season. They're absolutely one of the premier teams in football this year. I talked about this the week before, how they're, I'd say, fringe top 5. If you're talking about the top 5, 6, 7 teams in the league, Chargers are certainly up there. And now you look back on the season, there was one game that was separating them from being the one overall. And they're entering the playoffs looking like a threat. They're looking like a Super Bowl threat.
I don't know about a Super Bowl threat. Like we keep saying, we're going to get into our predictions in our second episode this week, but I think they're good. I don't think they're good enough. I don't know. I just don't think they're going to show up. I think they're going to be a one and done kind of deal here. Something's just weird about them. Everyone was so high on them all season. I was high on them most of the end of the season here. And I'm not saying they're not a good team. I just don't think they have what it takes to come out on top.
Fair enough, Chase.
I'm just happy the Broncos season's over.
I hear
That's
you.
fair.
This was a case of you guys had your opportunity when you got that little winning streak. Once it was over, it was just they got demoralized really fast. And at that point, it's you know what? You're better off without Vance Joseph. You're better off without this idiot. Just blow it all up. Get him out of there. Reshape the offense because you have a defense that's, I think the Broncos are very similar to the situation the Jaguars, find themselves in where you got all these playmakers.
That hurts, but it's so accurate.
Yeah, it sucks, but you have the playmakers on defense to where you've seen how quickly offenses can rebound with the right guys. So the Broncos they could be in the mix next year.
Yep.
49ers at the Rams. Rams won 48-32. The fact that they even gave up 32 points to the 49ers is really frustrating.
It was
no, it's not. Garbage time.
Meaningless.
Garbage time.
Yeah. The Rams took care of business the entire time. They ended up putting in their backups in the fourth quarter. So this game was good for the Rams because they got to end the season on a high note. They would lock up the number 2 seed. They get home field advantage for at least one game. And the 49ers, I'll talk about that. Don't you worry. The 49ers, they have a lot to look forward to next season as well. They get Jimmy Garoppolo back. They get Jerick McKinnon back. George Kittle has been a saint for them at tight end. And
no, he's been a minor 49er.
There you
Get
go.
it? Can't be a saint because they're the 49ers.
All right.
Get it?
Done with you. And stop looking at me.
And Earl Thomas is going to sign with the 49ers.
And Earl Thomas and possibly Antonio Brown are going to sign with the 49ers. No. But, yeah, I think that the 49ers will have a good year next year if they can stay healthy. But Austin was pointing at the fact that C.J. Anderson had 132 yards and a touchdown, and that just shows you that all running backs are literally worthless. Because C.J. Anderson is a fat piece of shit from the Denver Broncos, and all you need is a coach and an offensive line, and you can make any running back worth something. So there you go.
All right, fine. Praise the Rams system and all that stuff all you want. Just please don't say that this guy's just as good as Todd Gurley, because I hate when stuff like this happens, because then false narratives are born. Most running backs, yes, short shelf lives, interchangeable. I firmly believe that we've got a big 3 in the NFL right now: Todd Gurley, Zeke Elliott, and Saquon Barkley, as far as, 3 of the best all-purpose players in the league. And the Rams getting him back is going to be essential if they have any hope of reaching the Super Bowl this year. But
it would be really fun seeing Todd Gurley go play for the Raiders for a game.
He would do nothing.
Exactly.
Let's not forget.
I'm not saying it's not Todd Gurley. I'm not saying Todd Gurley's bad.
He did nothing 2 years ago when their team was trash. So you can't put a good running back on a trash team. It doesn't work like that. Look at David Johnson this year. He was horrible because the Cardinals are horrible. It's just how it works.
What about Saquon Barkley, 5-11?
Saquon Barkley was trying to prove something. If they go 4-10 or 4-12 next year, I guarantee you he doesn't have the same year he does this year.
Probably not. I just want them to be good again. Fuck, man. The Rams. I mean, it was Chase. I think you hit the nail on the head. It was important for them to once again score some points, because the Rams they haven't had a dominant defense this year. So if they're going to win in the postseason, they're going to do it by blowing teams out of the water. So they need to put up points in bunches.
Absolutely. Moving on. Seahawks at the Cardinals. Seahawks win.
Cardinals at the Seahawks, actually.
You're right. I don't know why I read it like that.
Because you're on the right side of the computer.
Yeah, you're right. Get it right. All right. Cardinals at the Seahawks. It was a good game. Seahawks ended up winning. This game didn't matter either. If the Seahawks lost, they were the 5 seed. If the Seahawks won, they were the 5 seed. This is why Week 17 is stupid. And that's pretty much it for me.
Well, the game, it did matter at the time, because if the Seahawks had lost and the Vikings had won, the game was happening at the same time. Granted, that's not the way it happened, but at kickoff, the game did matter for seeding, because if you're Seattle, where do you want to play? You want to go to Dallas, or do you want to play the most violent, scary defense in the NFL in Chicago? So,
That's fair. That's fair. You're right.
You know what I mean?
It did matter, I guess, for that.
Yeah. Fun fact about Seattle, by the way. I know that people have taken notice of the fact that this is actually a good team after they were kind of written off at the start of the season. Everybody forgot about him. But Chris Carson, 5th in the league in rushing yards. You might not think so off the top of your head, but that's how it fell. That's how it fell this year. And yeah, I mean the Seahawks.
And he was good last year too. He was not terrible last year. I remember. Well, yeah, until he got hurt, but he was in one of the top 2 or 3 running backs last year. So
yeah, no, he's a good player. He's in a good system, because that's all that Schottenheimer wants to run. Is he just wants to run the ball 30 times, and he says that he's going to run the ball 30 times, and that's exactly what he does.
Yep, and
it works.
And Lockett. I mean, Lockett's actually kind of become a favorite target of Russell Wilson. Surprisingly, he reached the end zone again.
Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson's touchdown rate is something ridiculous, where 1 out of every 1.5 balls thrown to him is a touchdown this season. It's I gotta find the stat. Well, I know and their connection, whenever Russell Wilson throws the ball to Tyler Lockett, he's a perfect quarterback rating on the season. So it's been a weird year for them, but weird in a good way. Austin's looking up the stat right now, I believe. But either way, Seahawks take care of business against the Cardinals. Seahawks are going to play Dallas in Dallas next week, and what will definitely be a battle of the running backs, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy if you actually look at the stats. Tyler Lockett was on pace to become the first receiver with at least 20% of his team's snaps. And he also gave his quarterback a perfect 158.3 passer rating when targeted. So there was some kind of voodoo going on between Wilson and Lockett this year. It's kind of crazy because when you talk about, top tier wide receivers, whether it's football wise or fantasy wise, when in the hell have you ever heard Tyler Lockett come into that conversation?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You really haven't, and here we are, and he had a metric shit ton of receptions and targets and stats to back up a now playoff run for the Seahawks. I mean, he's become, along with Chris Carson, like we just said, who's been playing pretty decently well. He's become one of the top tier wide receivers in this playoff run.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact is, he actually hasn't had a ton of receptions this year. It's just a matter of the fact that, like, whenever Russell gets the ball in his hands, they seem to make magic happen, because this is a guy who has 10 touchdowns on only 57 catches this year. 57 for just a shade under 1,000 yards, but 10 touchdowns. So he's averaging a touchdown every 5 to 6 catches. It's nuts. But yeah, obviously they've got a lot of chemistry going on right now, and this is an offense that's surprised a lot of people. I mean, those are the big three guys that are making it happen right now: Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, and Chris Carson. And they've, that's how they're putting points on the board. But this defense has also been extremely well coached in Seattle. You got Bobby Wagner in there, and Pete Carroll's a guy who's been there before. So I think experience absolutely matters in the playoffs, especially for a road team. And Seattle could be a dark horse here.
Speaking of dark horses, we got Nick Foles and the Eagles.
Don't you fucking start.
Don't you? Number 6 seed.
I'm sick to my goddamn
what looks
stomach.
Like a Cinderella story again? Question mark.
Exclamation point. Question mark.
What is happening? Are the Eagles better off with Nick Foles?
Said it last week. I mean, first off, I'm going to insert my foot into my mouth for a second because I said the Eagles weren't going to make the playoffs, and here we are. They're in the playoffs, so, like, fuck me. Nick Foles is clearly a better Eagles quarterback than who the hell's the other guy that I can't think of right now?
Carson Wentz.
Thank you, Carson Wentz. I was trying to say Chris Carson again.
I'm glad you said it like that because he's a better Eagles quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not a better quarterback.
Exactly. That's my point.
Fits Doug Peterson's system. They run more plays with Nick Foles. They run different plays with Nick Foles. And he gets the wide receivers going. He gets everybody else going. It's not just the Zach Ertz attack, even though Zach Ertz is still great with Nick Foles, as Austin can attest to.
He was worse with Nick Foles than he was with
because Carson Wentz only targets Zach Ertz.
Zach Ertz was the second highest scoring fantasy tight end this year in football behind Travis Kelce because, like, obviously Patrick Mahomes just threw the ball literally constantly. And the fact that Zach Ertz tailed off at the end of the year to where I almost started to Evan Ingram over him, and I freaking should have, even though I won. It's kind of crazy how different of an offense the Eagles have with Nick Foles.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's completely different.
Not only that, there's a statue of Nick Foles outside of the Eagles stadium.
What a joke.
There is Jason Kelce, I think, has shown that they have a shrine of Nick Foles in the locker room. Or he has a shrine of Nick Foles in the locker room.
Well, I mean, everybody from that Kelce family is a psychopath. So.
And I'll be honest. If you think it's magic, if you believe it's magic, sometimes that's just how things work. And, they might just ride this all the way in.
Shut up!
Oh, God, he doesn't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear it. I'm tired of hearing about this Cinderella story crap, this team with an injured defense. Let's be clear here, everybody. Who did they beat here? They beat the Washington Redskins, who might as well be a JV football squad at this point.
Washington Redskins go
all
fuck yourself.
Yeah, but they also smoked them 24-0. It wasn't like, it was a close game. They literally beat them to the ground.
Well, shouldn't you do that if you have a playoff berth at stake and you're playing against Josh Johnson and a bunch of nobodies?
They beat the Texans.
No, yeah, they did. Hey, look, it was impressive.
They beat the Rams.
Okay, all right. It was impressive what they did, beating the Rams game especially was very, very impressive. And they beat the Texans. Quality wins right there. I'm just saying that, like, all right.
Insert mouth.
The narrative's been written. It was written before this game because it was a foregone conclusion. Of course they're going to win this game. It was just a matter of were the Vikings going to choke again? And yes, they choked. I mean, you have to be frustrated. I know I'm frustrated the fact that they're in and the fact that Minnesota isn't, just because the fact that Minnesota missed out by half a game on the postseason, and they have an infinitely more talented team than Philadelphia does, in my opinion. That being said, they found the spark. They found their mojo. The offense definitely goes under Nick Foles. They need every bit of it, too, because they don't even have a defense right now. They're playing with a bunch. Their secondary's been in shambles pretty much the entire second half with all the injuries. So I don't think they have nearly the squad they had going into last year's playoffs, but they do have.
But I'm going to cut you off here. What if I told you ignore the records, and I said the last 3 games, the Eagles beat the Rams, the Texans, 2 playoff teams, and they took care of business against the Redskins, which isn't that exciting. But either way, they beat 2 playoff teams. Ignore the records. You don't think that they could beat the Bears and Mitchell Trubisky? I mean, I know the Bears have an amazing defense and they're playing red hot, but
that's the thing.
It's still Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, I feel like that's just straw manning it, looking at the quarterback situation. I mean, the fact that the Bears could be out.
You have to. That's what we do. It's the NFL. We look at the quarterbacks.
Well, yeah, and I hate that freaking narrative because the Bears. Listen, well, I want to save it for the preview episode, but I really think that although the Eagles seem like the charm team, this is the exact kind of team that you don't want to play right now. So I'll talk more about that. I don't put it out of the realm of possibility, but I do think the Eagles are going 1 and done. Just going to put that out there right now. I'll get more in-depth in the preview, but they've had hey, kudos to them for getting in the playoffs and rattling off the 3 straight wins, but I don't think it's happening again this year.
Very well. And just quickly to touch on the Redskins, since we're touching on all the teams, Redskins had a extremely good start to their season. It ended up with their quarterback going down, and then their backup quarterback going down, and then I think the backup. And then
the other backup quarterback was banished to a corner to think about what he's done.
They need to all drink a lot of milk for those leg bones of theirs, and it'll be interesting to see what this team has
How many
next year.
freaking fibulas broke in the NFL this year?
A lot.
Not even just on one team.
It wasn't. It was the fibula year, not the ACL year.
Seriously. How many freaking fibulas broke this year?
A lot.
It was like every 3rd game somebody snapped their fucking leg in half.
Yeah.
Everyone, man. It was just injury, a fibula. Say that 12 times fast. This year was insane for leg bones. From the hip bone attached to your leg bone and the leg bones attached to your
my
leg. Anyways, moving on. The Eagles are in the playoffs and everybody hates it other than you annoying Eagles fans. Cough, cough, Connor Angeliri. Another shout out this week.
I don't hate it.
I hate it.
Connor, you owe me a beer for giving you a shout out. You're welcome. Browns, Ravens. This game. Oh, man.
Oh, what happened?
I wanted the Browns to win so bad.
And
the Ravens are good. That's what happened. The Ravens' defense is really good, and the Browns are the Browns, and the Browns couldn't win the football game. It's as simple as that.
Buddy, I'm going to make one statement right now, and you guys are going to have to remember it. Browns are winning that division next year.
I don't disagree with you.
Winning the division. I'm not going to listen. I'm predicting 10 wins for them next year. I don't know if that's enough.
They're winning the division with 10 wins.
No, not necessarily. What, you don't?
Dude, the Steelers are gonna collapse next year, guaranteed.
Okay.
Steelers are gonna be another 8-8 record or whatever, and the Ravens, they might not even have the same coach next year. So I'm taking the Browns at 10 wins to win the division all day.
Absolutely.
I think it's way too early to make that kind of claim. I feel like
how I was way too early to make that kind of claim.
I'll
They went
tell you
7-8-1 this year. They lost they did not make the playoffs by a tie.
Okay. But to say they're going to win the division over the Ravens, who they're okay.
I realized they would have to win 3 more games than they did this year, which is not astronomical to think. Because did they not start Baker Mayfield for the first 3 games of the season?
Tyrod Taylor started this year. Let's not forget for 2.5 games.
Lamar Jackson came in after the fucking bye week. He came in after the half.
Because Joe Flacco's a fluke. The argument about the Ravens is not what we're having here. The argument is that the Browns are gonna win that division.
Yeah, the argument is that the Browns are going to be better next year.
I don't know why, because people now want to play for that team. There is a lot of fun and energy coming out of there, and Baker Mayfield is a fucking stud as a quarterback, and they're going to come in and they're going to kick ass next year because everyone on that team is great. Great. And honestly, didn't what's his name? Denzel Ward? Yeah. Didn't he not play in this game?
Yeah, he's been hurt.
And he's their number 1 defensive secondary player?
Yeah, he's their number 1.
Yes, rookie corner had a great year.
Okay.
The Browns really good. I'm not disagreeing with you, but you're saying that they're going to absolutely win the division at 10-6, no question about it. When that requires so you tell me that you don't think the Ravens, they went 10-6 this year, a full year of Lamar Jackson, you don't think that they could maybe win 1 more game than they did this year?
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not, because this is what happens.
And John Harbaugh won't be there next year.
This is what happens with
because
mobile quarterbacks. So? You get 1 year tape on them, and they do absolutely nothing the next year.
It's too early to make the claim. I think it's way too early to make that claim.
I'm using history.
I'm agreeing with Chase that I will say it as of recording time, 8:57 p.m. on 1/3/2019. Happy New Year, everybody who's listening.
Oh, yes, Happy New Year.
I agree 100% that the Browns will win that division next year.
Okay. All right.
That's what this is all about. Making outrageous claims, baby.
All right, fine. Well, right now we're talking about this season, and I am very glad that the Browns, although I like what's going on in Cleveland, I like what they got going on with this contingent of young players, and Baker Mayfield's emerged as a really strong leader of this group. I'm really glad that they didn't beat the Ravens and completely fuck up the AFC playoffs and let the Steelers back.
I wish they did, because it would have been great.
Oh, it would have been great.
Yeah, but then the Steelers would have been in, and I don't even like the Steelers.
It would have been so fun.
That's not fun. You watch the Steelers flop on their ass and
Steelers.
That is fun.
The Steelers were
watching the Steelers make the playoffs and then flop on their ass would have been a lot more enjoyable.
Honestly, if the Steelers played the Chargers, I feel like the Chargers would have just absolutely smoked them.
That's probably fair.
And now you let the Ravens in, who have a filthy defense, and they've got and I think that they have a legitimate Super Bowl chance this year. So I want to see the best.
Table it.
Yeah, table it, because I got some things to say about that.
Table it. Next episode.
Yeah.
I guess who they play? We talked about both teams there. All right, let's move on because we're going long already.
Raiders, Chiefs game that didn't matter. The Chiefs.
No, it mattered.
It mattered for the Chiefs to get
again, quite a lot.
Guys, let me speak instead of saying why it didn't matter, because I can say it didn't matter. It didn't matter because the Chiefs shit on the Raiders, just like the last game that I said didn't matter because the outcome was going to be the outcome, whether anybody liked it or not.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying
the Chiefs won 35-3. It didn't matter because this game's irrelevant score-wise. The Chiefs were going to do this. Everybody knew they were going to do this. The Raiders suck. They have sucked. Maybe they'll get better. Maybe they won't. Who knows? We've said it a million times. John Gruden screwed up, and maybe he has a plan for the 10th year of his contract to win the Super Bowl. God only knows it's not going to be anytime soon.
Raiders fans, don't expect next year to be that much better. Even if you guys do improve, it's not going to be enough to make the playoffs. It would be shocking if you guys improved that much, especially against a very tough division. And I'm saying that as the Broncos are the 3rd best team in this division, barely the 3rd best team.
Yes.
So it's not gonna turn around quickly for Raiders fans. So just hold on tight. And as for the Chiefs,
but they do have a quarterback. Just saying.
Oh, what?
I was gonna say the Raiders do have a quarterback. It's worth noting.
Yeah, we'll see how long they keep him. They might just dish him.
Yeah, maybe. You're not wrong.
As for the Chiefs, you got the number 1 seed. Now it's time to win at home.
Put them pants on.
Yeah.
Man. Time to put those big boy pants on. You got to go into Arrowhead. That place is loud, man. That place is a home-friendly stadium. I mean, this is no jabroni stadium. They are there to watch you guys kick some ass, and they are the argument that Seattle is the 13th man,
12th man.
12th man, whatever the fuck the math is. They're the 11th and a half man, whatever the wording is for that. The man, that Chiefs stadium is unreal. And if you go in there and you flop again, sell the team and move somewhere else. Because I'm not a Chiefs fan. Sarah is.
You're a Chiefs fan by association.
Correct. I'm a Chiefs fan by marriage. I'm forced to be a Chiefs fan. It's like hanging out with my in-laws. Man, to watch you guys over and over and over and over and over make the playoffs, have a high seed, and then lose at home.
Lose to the Titans.
And then lose to the Titans or fucking whoever. But yeah, specifically the Titans, because that's the most recent history. I mean, you got to figure something out, man. You have the home advantage the whole time, other than the Super Bowl if you make it that far. Literally the whole time you have the home advantage and a bye week. So you have a week of rest to go into whoever the hell you're going to play in 2 weeks. Take advantage of it and come out and kick some ass. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, I don't want to say he has a lot to prove, because I think he's proved a lot already, but I think as a narrative of if he's a top tier quarterback for a long time, this is where he can show that I think that he is. This is where he could show that he thinks that he is.
Well, he could be, but I think that this playoff game is going to be more about. I mean, we'll talk about it more on the playoff episodes, but like I feel like this Chiefs team, them going back to the playoffs. It's funny because this is Patrick Mahomes' first full year in the league, but the Chiefs, they feel like, oh yeah, okay, we've seen them do this before. Can they get it done this time? Because in the Andy Reid era, we've seen the Chiefs go to the playoffs many times and lose. So for him, it feels like, all right, here we go again. Now it's time to prove it. Patrick Mahomes, he's the safe one. He's like, okay, you just had a freaking killer season. But with Andy Reid, it's like, all right, man, you've now had several different quality winning Chiefs football teams. It's time for you to lead this team to a win in the postseason. So we'll get more into that in the next couple of weeks, but I do think that the pressure's more on Andy Reid in that regard.
Absolutely. They do get a bye, so that's nice. At least they're not losing in the first round.
Hell yeah.
The narrative, Chiefs losing the second round of the playoffs.
Bears at Vikings, and guess what? The Bears didn't want to face the Vikings in the playoffs because they went all out in this game.
Oh, God.
All out.
This game, I got to say, this is why the Bears should have taken the nosedive. They should have laid down. Because guess what? They knew that they could have wiped the floor with this Vikings team, and that's exactly what they did. Why not just give yourself an easy win in the playoffs instead of having to play the Eagles?
That's what I was literally talking about this at my actual job. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we don't get paid for this. And
feel free to sponsor.
Feel free to sponsor us. Maybe we'll open a Patreon if this gets popular.
What's the other thing that they do for
GoFundMe?
Yeah, GoFundMe. Yeah. There you go. Go fund the podcast.
We'll talk about it. But anyway, now that you're getting all this great free content, I was talking.
That sounds so positive about it, Chase. We love giving away free content, folks. Don't you?
Yeah.
Chase doesn't pay the bills. Here I do.
At my actual job, like I was saying, we were talking about the NFL playoffs, and what a terrible draw for the Bears. The Bears have to play in the first round at home against a red-hot gunslinger of a freaking team that literally is just like on cloud nine right now, has no fear of anything, thinks that they can go in and win the Super Bowl again. Like, this is a terrible draw in my mind. Like, if they got the Vikings, if they got the Seahawks, if they got I don't know who else was the other team that would have got in. I think those are probably the only three. If they got any of those other two teams, I would have taken the Bears, no problem. But the Eagles, and we saw what happened last year. You got to think this is probably the worst matchup for them.
I mean, I agree that it's certainly less desirable than many, and that's why I said going into when we did our preview last week, predictions for Week 17, I said the Bears held the fate of the NFC playoffs in their hands, and you know that you can kick the shit out of the Vikings, so why not just kick the shit out of them in the playoffs rather than letting the Eagles in, who are the last team that anyone wants to have to deal with. But that being said, Chicago's had a great season, and I think that if there's any...
You know why I want to see the Bears play the Eagles? Do you know why?
Why?
Because I want to see Khalil Mack on the first play of that game just rip Nick Foles' skull from his shoulder blades.
I do too.
I don't care. Chase, just from a distance, because he walked away for 2 seconds here, said that their offensive line is good too, which is not wrong. However, Khalil Mack is better than every offensive line on the planet. And Khalil Mack, if you could stop time for 2 seconds before the first sack Khalil Mack puts on Nick Foles and play like the Mortal Kombat theme song and then have the announcer scream fatality over the microphone, would just be incredible. Because I literally want to see Khalil Mack kill Nick Foles. Just kill him. Murder him. I mean, I don't obviously I don't promote murder or violence towards anybody.
The great thing
but
is
on the field, I want to see him rip his skull off of his head and then punt it through the uprights.
Yeah, the Bears are a physical, violent, terrifying football team defensively this season.
What a perfect name for that team, too.
Yeah.
Bears.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, they look great. I mean, they had such a great season, such an overachieving season. They arrived. I think that we thought this was going to be a building year for them, not a rebuilding year, but a building year, to kind of prime them for maybe a run in 2019. But they arrived a year early. And the Vikings, though, let's hold their feet to the fire, man. They choked this year. They choked repeatedly. The fact that, for all their shortcomings, they still finish only a game out of the playoffs. And you look at their season. Let's look at their season. They went 8-7-1. Let's look at who they lost to. They lost to the Rams. They tied the Packers. They lost to the Bears twice. They lost to the Saints. They lost to the Patriots. They lost to the Seahawks. What does that add up to? You can't win the big one. You can't hang with the big dogs.
Did you hear about the news about Kirk Cousins? Anybody?
$84 million richer.
Well, no, but that he's wanted for robbery. Did you hear that he's wanted for robbery, Jared?
Robbery of what?
Robbery of $84 million from the Vikings.
He
stole 84. He's a con artist. He stole $84 million and then sucked ass. Like,
that is so much money.
Ate butt fruit out of somebody's asshole.
Well, I mean, the Vikings should have
little too much here.
No, I mean
that is a lot of money for a quarterback that can't win the big game.
He
They're gonna have a lot of issues if they can't figure it out.
He had this problem.
And I know it's one season. What's that?
I said I'm a Giants fan. I watched him in Washington. He had this problem there too.
Yeah,
couldn't be good teams.
It's only 1 year, so I'm not gonna totally write him off yet, but boy, he better have a stellar second year with the Vikings. And moving on, we got a couple games left here. Bengals at the Steelers. This one's not much to talk about. The Steelers won, but ended up not getting into the playoffs because of the Ravens' victory over the Browns. The Steelers end the Steelers. Let me say this: the Steelers start the season with off-the-field problems, and the Steelers end the season with off-the-field problems.
With more off-the-field problems.
Yeah. Le'Veon Bell. Oh, go ahead. You can go ahead. You take this one.
Sorry, they're a daytime soap opera at this point. I mean, they're in shambles. When you're talking about, like, Jesse James does an interview says that we're the Kardashians right now. Like, you got people that are like, Antonio Brown throws a shit fit at practice and he doesn't play in this game. Big Ben is openly.
Well, no, it wasn't his choice. They benched him, and now he's asking for a trade.
No, actually,
I mean, there's all right. So hold on.
I know the whole story.
Yeah, so there's like multiple reports on what's going on. So I will let Chase go ahead.
So because there is multiple reports going on, and this is the final report, the sum up of everything, basically. Antonio Brown did not show up to Saturday's walkthroughs, and with no, he didn't tell coach or anything like that. Apparently he faked an injury the day before, on Friday, and that was like his excuse for not showing up on Saturday. And then his agent called Tomlin, and Tomlin said, I'll talk to Antonio on Sunday, but this isn't how we handle things. We don't just not show up to Saturday walkthroughs. So then Antonio showed up on Sunday, And Tomlin talked to him, and he's like, I'm feeling better. I feel like I could play.
Yeah.
And Tomlin was like, well, you're not going to play because you didn't show up yesterday. So that's what happened. And now Antonio is all over Twitter flirting with other teams. And yeah, I would be very surprised to see Antonio Brown in a Steelers jersey next year.
I would also be very surprised to see the Steelers trade Antonio Brown because of the caliber of a player he is.
They got Juju.
Meh.
Dude,
He had more receiving yards.
Dude, Juju was
than Antonio
top
this
5.
year.
Juju was
Antonio Brown is still one of the best receivers in the NFL.
All right,
Yeah.
well, think what you could get for him. You could get
No, I get the
first round pick.
I understand. I understand the caliber of player he is and the value that he brings to that team and the value that he brings to a trade situation. I just don't see them trading him. I don't see them getting rid of a player like that because there's an immediate impact of trading a player like that. Unless you're going to get a player of that caliber in return. If you're talking about getting 2 or 3 draft picks for him, now you're talking 4 years down the road waiting for those players to show up and start playing.
Not necessarily. You
No,
saw
not at
how
all.
rookies made an impact this year, especially on the Browns, especially on the Giants. I think if you trade him for a high overall first round pick, you trade him to one of those top 10 teams in the first round.
Like the Bears, and then they make the playoffs.
No,
and
I'm
first
saying
round draft picks are relevant.
You do it before the draft this year.
I'm
Yeah,
joking,
and obviously those aren't
but-
going to change. I think that's a great move, especially maybe to a team that is only one superstar away from becoming a playoff team.
The Bills.
Yeah, possibly. They've needed I don't know if Antonio would be feeling that, but I'm thinking more like
Antonio doesn't have to feel it unless he has a no trade clause in his contract.
I'm thinking more like the 49ers, which is who he's been tweeting at, because they don't have a star wide receiver there. They are one player away, and Jimmy Garoppolo coming back from being a playoff team. And I can definitely see a narrative where Antonio Brown is traded this offseason.
I totally agree. I mean, he's got some years on him, so I mean, you're not like terribly worried about like, oh, we're trading the stud 23-year-old wide receiver that has 15 years left. I mean, he's halfway through his career. You know, I'm not saying that he's washed up or anything, but you know, you don't have to fret over. Again, when you got a guy like Juju who's younger and his production was a little bit above Antonio Brown's this year. If the guy is causing this many problems in the locker room, just get rid of him. You know, you can. I mean, I feel like they've got Big Ben. They've only got a few years left of him anyway before they're going to have to be looking at a quarterback change. They have a defense that's in transition. They have a running game that's now in transition. So I think now's the perfect time if you want to start preparing for the next chapter of the Pittsburgh Steelers and what this team's going to look like for the next 10 to 15 years. Then get just continue to get younger, and if you can get some value from them, why not?
I agree. And the last game in what was the playoff or finisher, we'll call it, the playoff fatality almost.
I appreciate.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Jokes always have to come back full circle. And that one came full circle, so I appreciate going back to the punchline. Thank you.
Colts at the Titans, and the Titans played without Marcus Mariota. And as soon as that news was released, I should have changed my pick, but I did not. And the Colts ran away with this one, 33-17. It's probably the second worst team to face in the first round would be the Colts, because it would be, for me, the worst two teams to face in the first round are the Eagles and the Colts. Both the 6th seed, both coming off ridiculously hot streaks. The Colts more so, winning, I think, 9 of their last 10.
Correct.
8 of their last 9.
9 of 10. They started 1-5.
9 of their last 10 games. They haven't lost a game since probably week 10 or something like that. And I'm sorry, Houston Texans fans, but you're running into a buzzsaw right now. The Colts and Andrew Luck are coming for you.
I agree. They got a lot of momentum. They've got a quarterback who has playoff experience. He's got poise. He's got leadership. The Colts having to come back from 1-5, they were pretty much given their last rites. At the start of the season, they were predicted to be a last-place team in that division. They were predicted to be one of the... I think some people might have said that they could have been one of the worst teams in the AFC coming into this year, it was them and the Buffalo Bills were catching the most flack, and maybe the Raiders. And for them to go 10-6, it's not just Andrew Luck either. I mean, look at Marlon Mack, the way he's come alive in the running game. Eric Ebron has emerged, along with T.Y. Hilton, who's always been Andrew Luck's favorite target. So they got to, and I mean, they finally cleaned up the offensive line a little bit, what Nelson's been able to do, providing some protection. So the Colts have been just really impressive, and their defense hasn't been too shabby either. As for Tennessee, they had a pretty inspired run in the second half after they hit a snag that might have killed their playoff hopes, but they came back strong. I don't think they would have won this game even with Marcus Mariota, but it's clear with Blaine Gabbert that they were boys playing a man's game.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Listen, the Titans can very well pick it up and be a better team with, that one player that Chase was just talking about that, a lot of these teams need. And, I don't think they're a bad team, but they can definitely use that one extra guy and really make it to that next position,
I think they're just too mediocre. The Titans, they just don't have I mean Derrick Henry was the one feared guy, I guess, over the last few weeks because he had so many huge games to end the season. But when you look at the Titans, you look at playoff teams, most of them have a certain quality about them that scares you about the team. You look at a team like the Chargers, they have it's Phil Rivers, Keenan Allen, Melvin Gordon we have to deal with. Ravens, it's oh my God, this defense, they can sack us, they can turn it over. Patriots, Tom Brady. Colts, Andrew Luck. Chiefs, Mahomes, and all those guys. You look at the Titans, even if they got in, what is the one quality about them that would make you afraid? Nothing.
Yeah, well, that's why they fit my perfect mold of the annoying team.
Correct.
And 9-7 is the perfect annoying team's record right there. Actually, I guess 8-8 would probably be better, but 9-7, they're good enough to win games, but not good enough to win all the games.
Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up regular season talk for the NFL 2018 to 2019. Thank you very much for being with us throughout the regular season. We're excited for the playoffs. But before we get to the playoffs, I think you guys know what time it is.
Do you know what time it is?
Chase? You know what time?
Does anybody know what time it is?
It's time for the moment of the week.
Jared, kick it off.
Well, let's see. Moment of the week. The Minnesota Vikings are interested in interviewing Hugh Jackson to be their offensive coordinator. Hugh Jackson, owner of the 336-1 in Cleveland as a head coach. The guy that a rookie quarterback, Baker Mayfield, just a few weeks in the league, he already figured out that this guy is poison and a cancer, and that he doesn't want him anywhere near him and his contingent of young players. Now he's supposed to be the genius that's going to fix the Minnesota Vikings offense that couldn't function this year with all of their weapons. Apparently what they were missing was Hugh Jackson. Good luck!
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And the reason why I agree is because that was my old moment of the week, so I hate you for taking it, but I'm glad that you took it because it's just that much more hilarious that the both of us agree that, and I said this, 2 weeks ago, potentially last week, it was at least 2 or 3 episodes ago, the hashtag of fuck you Jackson. Yeah, that, I mean, if it doesn't sum it up, this is a joke. You missed the playoffs because you sucked offensively and defensively, but at least offensively. And now you want to hire Hugh Jackson as your offensive coordinator? Hey, we sucked offensively. How can we get worse? That is how you sum up that sentence of we want to hire Hugh Jackson to run our fucking offense.
I've heard that he's in talks for head coaching jobs too.
You know who he should head coach? A Pop Warner team wherever the hell that he lives. That's what he should do. Because that's good for the community, and that's what's good for football.
I'm sure Hugh Jackson is a fine gentleman.
He's a terrible human being.
No, I don't have any respect for him because
he's just an awful football coach.
How do you go
so bad? He's so bad.
How do you go 3-36-1 and then he blamed everybody else? He's like, oh, it wasn't my fault because they didn't listen to me.
Yeah, and then
they didn't listen to you because you suck.
And then he leaves and the team goes 7-4 or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are good ones. Is that a joint one? That's fine if it is. I'll finish her off here.
I'll let you go, and if I can't come up with anything else in the meantime, it'll be a joint one.
So I would like to say our friend of the podcast, but he's not our friend of the podcast. I wish he was. Pat McAfee.
What am I trying to say here? A podcaster himself, if you will.
Yeah,
a fellow podcaster.
Employee of Barstool Sports.
No, used to be. Ex-employee, no longer.
Former employee of Barstool Sports, former
and
NFL
we here called
punter,
the bullpen love Barstool
former
Sports.
NFL holder as well, held for Adam Vinatieri while he was a Colt. Anyway, he got his first gig working for Fox as a color commentator. And, he's obviously the best part of watching football now because he's an absolute genius and knows how to work a microphone.
He's the funniest guy on the planet.
And so the first game he announces, the Lions kicker, Matt Prater, does a fake field goal touchdown pass to the back of the end zone. And he just absolutely loses his mind because he's all about, like how the kickers and the punters and the special teams don't get any love. And, it's all about the offense. And he's right. And
it's like the front man of a rock band. Nobody sleeps with the bassist. That's how it is, man.
Ouch town. So, yeah, he absolutely lost it, screaming, let's go, like he was one of the boys just watching it on TV. And it was an awesome moment. And I was told apparently that he just signed a contract with the WWE too. So
correct. Which he was also sending out videos over the last Jared? I think you're gonna test like 6 months or something like that. I remember he had like a promo video of like why he should fight a couple of the guys in the WWE at least 4 or 5 months ago now. So like he's a WWE fan, and I remember listening to some of his Barstool episodes and talking about the WWE and stuff like that, and having WWE guys on his shows for interviews. So good for him. Good for him retiring and doing his thing and doing what he loves. So shout out Pat McAfee.
Living the dream.
Yeah, brother.
So there you go. That's mine.
Without question.
All right, well, Jared, it sounds a little corny, but you stole my freaking old moment. I had it ready to rock. As soon as you started talking, I looked at Chase with utter disgust on my face because that's exactly what I was going to talk about. So we're going to do a joint one because it's just that bad. Yep. Hugh Jackson, it's just that bad that you deserve two people absolutely hating you.
Correct. Yeah.
So that is going to be it for this week's recap.
That's going to be it for NFL recap for this season, for the regular season.
For the regular season, yes.
We're going to come back with our next episode, which will be available shortly after this one if you're listening.
And that's going to be it for our Week 17 recap and our final recap of the NFL regular season. It's been a blast, podcasting with you fellas, and we're going to have a nice fun playoffs and some implications I'm sure will unfold every week. So that's going to be it from us. Remember to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, listen to us on Libsyn, Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, Stitcher. What's the other one?
Spotify.
Oh, I said Spotify.
He said Spotify.
Yeah, I did. I'm learning.
Libsyn, iTunes, YouTube. You forgot YouTube.
Oh,
YouTube,
yeah,
Spotify, and Stitcher. As always, give us a shout whenever you're listening. Let us know what you like and you don't like. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Give us a shout on there. And just keep an eye out for, future MLB episodes and some interim episodes in between the baseball and football seasons. We might try to implicate some wrestling talks. Jared is an independent wrestling manager himself, so he will potentially be bringing some interview guests on from the local scenes and from around the country, hopefully. So those might be some special episodes thrown in as bonus content. So keep an eye out. Keep an eye out on our Facebooks and Instagrams and Twitters and whatnot for those announcements and info on that.
Absolutely, and stay tuned. We will have our NFL playoff prediction episode coming up shortly, so keep an eye out for that. We will be breaking down the entire NFL playoff scenario, and we will be giving you our picks on who we think is going to win it all. Jared.
This has been Call to the Bullpen.
And we are
hanging up.
Up.